You feel it long before you name it. A quiet pull beneath your choices, a soft tremor behind the people you fall for, a strange familiarity in the faces that seem to find you again and again. It is subtle, almost invisible, yet it shapes the entire architecture of your intimate life. You think you choose with your mind, yet something older moves through you, something deeper, something that remembers what you have forgotten. And when you look closely, you feel its breath behind every yes and every no. There is a moment, usually in the quiet hours, when you wonder why you keep meeting the same kind of person, why the patterns return in slightly different forms, why the wounds echo the same melody. You tell yourself it is coincidence or fate or simply the way life unfolds. But a softer truth waits in the margins. It whispers that your heart is not wandering freely. It is being guided, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, always with purpose. You sense it in the way certain people feel like home before you know their names. You sense it in the magnetism that pulls you toward what scares you, what excites you, what mirrors the parts of you you rarely touch. There is a shadow at work, not as an enemy, but as a hidden architect. It carries the memories of every unmet need, every unspoken grief, every abandoned self that once asked for love and never received it. And so it reaches out through your desires, through your longings, through your reckless attractions. You try to break the pattern with logic. You promise yourself you will choose differently next time. You set boundaries. You swear you have learned. Yet when the next connection appears, it bypasses thought and goes straight to your bones. It feels inevitable, almost scripted, as if you were being led into a familiar forest where only your body remembers the path. Something ancient opens the door before your conscious mind even reaches the house. There is a quiet ache that accompanies this recognition. The ache of knowing you were not fully present in your choices. The ache of feeling guided by an inner stranger who knows you more intimately than you know yourself. Part of you resists this idea. Another part feels relief, because deep down, you have always sensed that your relationships were messengers, that every encounter carried a coded message your conscious mind was not yet ready to decode. Yet beneath this ache, a question begins to rise. What if your shadow is not choosing to punish you, but to lead you back to the places you abandoned inside yourself? What if every person you loved, lost, chased, or feared was simply a mirror placed in your path to show you what you could not see on your own? What if nothing was random? What if nothing was a mistake? Something in you leans closer to this possibility. Something in you knows there is a truth hidden behind this recurring pattern, waiting for you like a sealed letter left on a quiet altar. You can almost feel it in your hands. And yet, beneath it all, something still calls your name. You begin to feel the presence of this inner force when you slow down enough to notice the subtle movements beneath your thoughts. It is not loud. It never demands. It reveals itself like a shifting shadow on the wall of an old room, something you always sensed but never fully saw. Your relationships become the lanterns that illuminate it, each connection casting a soft light that exposes another hidden shape within you. And as you watch these shapes emerge, you start to understand that the people who enter your life do not come by chance. They come as reflections of the forgotten landscapes inside your own psyche. In the language of your inner world, the shadow is not darkness. It is simply the part of you that has lived in the night of your awareness. It holds the memories you did not know how to hold. It contains the desires you silenced. It carries the fears you disguised as strength. And because it is unseen, it moves in subtle currents, directing your steps with a kind of ancient intelligence. You feel its influence when someone pulls you in without reason. You feel it when an old wound flares at the sound of a familiar tone. You feel it when a stranger unsettles you, because they resemble a part of you that you have never met. You may believe you are drawn to others because of qualities they possess. Yet something deeper recognizes patterns long before your mind understands them. A voice inside you whispers, not in words but in sensations. It says, "Here is someone who mirrors your unfinished work. Here is someone who carries the lost piece of your story. Here is someone whose presence will stir what you kept asleep." And without knowing why, you move toward them as if answering a call you heard long before this lifetime. There is a kind of gravity at play, an unconscious magnetism woven into your emotional history. It pulls you toward those who resemble the emotional shape of your past. You are drawn not to what is healthy, but to what is familiar. You seek not what frees you, but what feels like home, even when home was a place of confusion, longing, or silence. Even when home was the absence of tenderness. Your shadow chooses what echoes the earliest patterns, because it believes healing begins where the wound was first formed. In this sense, every relationship becomes a mirror room, a quiet temple where your unseen self steps forward. You notice it in the way certain people make you feel small, or powerful, or exposed, or invisible. They awaken the old configurations of your inner world, and you respond instinctively. You reenact dynamics you swore you would never repeat. You find yourself saying words that feel borrowed from an older version of you. It is as if you enter a dream where the past is still alive, asking you to finally wake up. The shadow does not act alone. It collaborates with memory, with emotion, with the silent marks left on your body by moments you never spoke about. It guides you toward people who carry symbolic keys, individuals who activate insights you were not ready to face. Sometimes they come wrapped in beauty. Sometimes they arrive in chaos. Sometimes they feel like destiny. Sometimes they feel like danger. And yet, every one of them holds a piece of your reflection. You may notice that your most intense relationships are rarely calm. They are charged with the electricity of recognition. They stir storms inside you, storms you thought you had outgrown. These storms are not punishments. They are awakenings. They shake loose the pieces of your identity that remained frozen in time. They return you to yourself, even as they challenge you. They reveal the emotional architecture you built to survive, inviting you to question whether those same structures now limit your growth. There is an old forest within you, filled with paths you walked so many times you no longer needed to think. And when a new person enters your life, you unconsciously lead them into that forest. You invite them into familiar patterns without knowing it. The forest feels comfortable, even when it is dark. Even when you get lost, your shadow knows these trees. It knows the way the branches bend. It knows the direction of the wind. And so you walk the same paths, searching for a different ending. But slowly, a soft realization begins to bloom. These patterns are not prisons. They are messages. They invite you to look beyond the immediate experience and ask why your heart chooses the people it chooses. Why your longing tends to follow the same rivers. Why your loneliness carries the shape of a face you have seen before. Each relationship becomes a teacher, a guide carved from the clay of your own unconscious. They help you see the ways you hide from yourself. They help you uncover the emotions you buried. They help you understand what you have been circling around for years. And as this awareness grows, you start to notice the delicate choreography behind every connection. You feel the shadow not as a force against you, but as a guardian of your depth. It chooses relationships not to trap you, but to wake you. It leads you to mirrors that reveal what your conscious mind refuses to touch. And in these reflections, you discover the truth that has been waiting in silence. That your relationships are not random encounters. They are invitations into your own soul. The night inside you begins to soften. The forest feels less threatening. The mirrors lose their sharpness. You begin to see yourself with gentler eyes. And in that quiet recognition, a door opens. You sense that something deeper is ready to be explored, something hidden in the fabric of your patterns, something that has been guiding you from behind the scenes, waiting for the moment when you finally turn toward it and listen. You feel the shift first as a quiet stirring in your chest, a subtle movement like the first ripple on the surface of a still lake. You are drawn into memories without trying. Faces rise, voices echo, sensations return in fragments, as if the past were brushing lightly against your skin. It is not dramatic. It is almost tender. Yet within this tenderness lives the beginning of a revelation. Your relationships have always awakened what you believed you had left behind. And as these feelings return, you begin to sense the deeper pattern unfolding beneath your choices. There is a moment when you remember the first time someone's presence felt strangely familiar. You could not explain it. They appeared, and something inside you softened, or tightened, or sparked. It was not attraction alone. It was recognition. A recognition older than your adult self. A recognition shaped in rooms you no longer visit, built from emotions you once tried to silence. You moved toward them instinctively, as if your body had made the decision long before your thoughts caught up. That quiet pull was your shadow, guiding you with the precision of a dream. You begin to see that the figures you loved most deeply were never random. They reflected the emotional climate of your early world. They carried echoes of the ones who shaped your sense of love, safety, longing, and loss. Their eyes mirrored something familiar. Their tone resembled a memory. Their gestures awakened a response you learned long ago. And in that response, you reenacted stories you never had the chance to finish. Stories full of tenderness and hunger. Stories full of silence and unanswered questions. Stories that still lived inside you, waiting to breathe again. When you are close to someone, the shadow steps forward with delicate precision. It brings forth the parts of you you hide from others. The sadness you never acknowledged. The anger you disguised as calm. The need for closeness you pretended not to feel. Every moment of vulnerability becomes an opening where the shadow reveals a new truth. You notice it in your fear of abandonment. You notice it in the way you shrink or expand in another's presence. You notice it in the invisible agreements you enter without speaking. These are not flaws. They are traces of forgotten emotional maps. As you watch this dance unfold, you begin to sense how deeply intertwined your relationships are with your inner landscape. The people who enter your life do not simply love you or hurt you. They activate dormant layers of your psyche. They stir sensations that have not been touched in years. They resurrect colors you stopped seeing. They bring fire to the cold corners of your heart. And as they do, you feel your inner world stretching, bending, shifting, as if the very architecture of your identity were being rearranged by the force of connection. There is an image that rises naturally here. A mirror in the middle of a dimly lit room. You stand before it, yet you hesitate to look fully. The reflection is not only your face. It is your longing. It is your fear. It is the child you were. It is the adult you pretend to be. And as you gaze into that mirror, the shapes begin to merge. You see the outline of every person who has ever moved your heart. Their presence lingers in the mirror not because they defined you, but because they revealed you. They showed you the parts you tried to forget. They showed you the places where healing had not yet reached. Every relationship becomes a threshold, a doorway between your conscious identity and the deeper truths living beneath it. You realize now that you never entered these connections as a blank slate. You carried a whole forest within you, filled with old paths and silent rivers. And those you loved walked into that forest with you, unintentionally illuminating the paths you avoided. Their presence brought moonlight to the branches. Their closeness disturbed the sleeping leaves. And in that disturbance, you felt your soul beginning to speak again. You sensed the truth now. The shadow never chose people to harm you. It chose people to open you. It chose them to bring shape to your unspoken stories. It chose them to help you encounter parts of yourself that could not be reached alone. And as this realization settles gently into your awareness, something in you relaxes. You feel a soft breath inside your chest, a quiet acceptance. And from this acceptance, the next layer of the journey begins to reveal itself, like the slow unfurling of a path deeper into your inner forest. You enter this next layer with a slower breath, as if crossing an invisible threshold. The light changes around you. The air deepens. You feel the presence of emotions you once learned to avoid, emotions that drift through your awareness like shadows moving between trees. There is no need to rush. This is the part of the journey where your inner world begins to speak more clearly, where the unconscious reveals what it has held for years. And as you stand in this quiet space, you begin to understand how your relationships have always awakened these forgotten currents. There is a moment, perhaps more than one, when someone's affection felt overwhelming in a way you could not explain, or when someone's distance pierced you more deeply than it should have. These reactions were not about the person in front of you. They were about the emotional landscapes rising behind them. Every touch stirred memories in your body. Every silence echoed an earlier silence. Every conflict mirrored the unresolved tensions you packed away to survive. Your shadow recognized these echoes long before your conscious mind understood them. It led you back into the familiar shapes of longing, so you could finally feel and transform what once shaped you. You start noticing patterns in the way you attach to others, patterns in how you defend yourself, patterns in how you chase what is not given and retreat from what is offered too easily. These patterns are not flaws. They are emotional constellations formed by your earliest experiences. You learned how to love from the people who first held you. You learned how to fear from the people who disappointed you. You learned how to hope from the moments when someone saw you. And you learned how to hide from the moments when no one did. The shadow holds these lessons tightly, not out of cruelty, but out of memory. It believes that repeating the pattern will lead to resolution. It believes that reenacting the old story will give you a chance to rewrite it. So you meet people who resemble the emotional presence of your past. People who awaken the same longing. People who open the same wounds. People who carry the same emotional temperature. And though you may resist this idea, part of you recognizes the truth. You have always been drawn to what feels familiar, even when the familiar is painful. As this awareness expands, you sense a deeper truth unfolding. Your shadow is not merely repeating old patterns. It is trying to complete them. It is guiding you toward people who trigger your defenses so you can finally see them. Toward people who stir your vulnerability so you can finally feel it. Toward people who activate your fears so you can finally name them. These relationships become alchemical vessels, containers where transformation slowly begins to take shape. The heat of emotion becomes the fire. The vulnerability becomes the catalyst. The connection becomes the crucible where your old self softens enough to become something new. A vivid image appears here, a small flame burning in a dark room. It flickers, fragile yet steady. This flame is your awareness, quietly illuminating the hidden corners of your psyche. When someone touches your life, the flame rises. It casts light on old shadows. It reveals forgotten textures. It shows you the outlines of emotions you spent years avoiding. And in this warm glow, you begin to understand the purpose behind the discomfort. You realize that the people who stir your deepest reactions are not obstacles. They are lanterns. Every painful attraction becomes a message. Every confusing dynamic becomes a symbol. Every heartbreak becomes a doorway. You learn to see the emotional triggers as signs, pointing toward the places inside you that still hold remembrance. You realize that intimacy is not only a meeting of bodies or minds, but a meeting of unconscious histories. Each encounter becomes an unfolding of your inner narrative. And as you witness this unfolding, something within you softens. The forest grows quieter. The river becomes clearer. The path begins to reveal its shape. You feel a new strength forming inside you. A strength born not from control, but from understanding. You begin to walk through your emotional world with gentler steps. You hold your reactions with curiosity rather than judgment. You acknowledge your patterns without shame. And in this growing clarity, you sense that the journey is not ending. It is deepening. A new chamber opens in the temple of your inner world, waiting for you to enter and discover what lies beyond the familiar patterns. You step into this deeper chamber with a sense of quiet anticipation. The air feels different here, softer yet more charged, as if the walls themselves were listening. You sense the presence of something you have been approaching from the very beginning, something that has waited patiently through every pattern, every relationship, every ache that brought you to this moment. The shadow is no longer a distant figure hidden behind your choices. It stands closer now, almost beside you, and in its presence, you begin to see a truth that changes everything. You realize that every person who has crossed your path carried a symbolic message meant for you. They were mirrors, yes, but each mirror reflected a different layer of your being. Some reflected your longing. Some reflected your fear. Some reflected your strength. Others revealed the vulnerability you tried to ignore. Together, they formed a constellation of your inner world, a map made of faces, voices, gestures, and emotional seasons. This map did not point outward. It always pointed back to you. As this understanding deepens, you begin to notice how often you abandoned yourself while trying to be loved. You shaped your identity around the expectations of others. You quieted your truth to keep peace. You offered care in the hope of being chosen. You carried wounds that were never yours to carry. And each relationship that cracked under the weight of these old habits was not a failure. It was a message, a reminder that the pattern could not continue. A sign that your soul was asking for something more honest, more real, more aligned with who you are becoming. You see now how your shadow stepped in each time you drifted away from yourself. It chose partners who exposed where you felt small. It chose relationships that revealed where you felt unworthy. It chose connections that awakened parts of you you had numbed. It was not trying to hurt you. It was trying to bring you home. It used repetition as a form of guidance. It used attraction as a compass. It used heartbreak as a doorway into deeper awareness. And now, standing in this inner chamber, you begin to understand the language it was speaking all along. A symbolic image rises slowly in your mind. You are standing before an ancient door carved into the stone of your inner temple. It has no handle. It opens only when you stop forcing it, only when you place your hand gently on its surface, only when you allow yourself to feel the truth written in its grain. This door leads to the part of you that no relationship could ever fill. The part of you abandoned in the earliest chapters of your story. The part of you your shadow has always been trying to bring back into the light. As your hand rests on the door, you feel memories stirring within you. Not memories of events, but memories of feelings. The feeling of wanting to be seen. The feeling of wanting to be held. The feeling of wanting to be understood without explanation. These feelings form a quiet river beneath every choice you have made. You realize now that you were not searching for people. You were searching for yourself within them. You were searching for the love you withheld from your own heart. And your shadow chose relationships that would eventually reveal this truth. There is a serenity that enters your body as you recognize this. A soft warmth, like the glow of a lantern at dusk. You sense that the people who challenged you were not adversaries. They were catalysts. They stirred the waters of your soul so the buried sediments could rise. They awakened the depth you were afraid to feel. They held up mirrors that asked you to look without turning away. And in doing so, they brought you back to the threshold of your own healing. You begin to understand that true intimacy cannot happen until you meet yourself fully. Not the self you present, not the self you protect, but the self you have avoided. The self who holds the truth of your needs, your wounds, your desires, your potential. Every relationship that has broken you brought you closer to this meeting. Every disappointment redirected you toward this inner door. Every loss whispered that something in you was ready to be reclaimed. The chamber grows quieter as this truth settles within you. The flame you carry burns steadier now. The forest within you feels less tangled. The river feels wider, clearer. And as you take a slow breath, you sense that the journey is shifting. You are no longer walking blindly through old patterns. You are walking with awareness, with presence, with a deeper understanding of the self that has been waiting behind every relationship your shadow has chosen. And from this place of clarity, the path begins to rise toward a new horizon, inviting you into the next stage of your unfolding. You rise from the chamber with a new kind of stillness, the kind that comes when something hidden has finally been named. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It feels like the soft glow that appears just before dawn, that quiet moment when the sky holds its breath and everything waits for the first trace of light. You carry this light within you now. It moves with you. It softens the edges of your memories. It changes the way your heart rests in your chest. You feel the weight of your patterns, but you no longer feel lost inside them. There is a sense of inner spaciousness, as if your soul has been gently expanded from the inside. As you walk through the forest of your inner world, you notice the paths differently. Some of them still lead into familiar shadows, yet they no longer frighten you. The branches above you no longer seem threatening. The roots beneath your feet no longer feel like traps. The forest has not changed. You have. You see the places where you once stumbled. You see the clearings where you once stayed too long. You see the hidden corners where your shadow waited patiently for you to return. And now, instead of walking with confusion, you walk with a quiet understanding. The patterns that once held you captive now appear as old teachings, not chains. You begin to sense how each relationship shaped the landscape of your soul. Some carved valleys in your heart. Some built mountains of insight. Some left rivers of longing that still flowed gently along the edges of your awareness. You feel gratitude rising for all of them, even the ones that once felt unbearable. They were the fires that softened the hardened parts of you. They were the storms that washed away the illusions you clung to. They were the nights that guided you toward your own dawn. And as this gratitude spreads through your body, the entire inner forest seems to shimmer with a quiet luminescence. There is a river nearby, one you have crossed many times without noticing. You walk toward it now. The surface is calm, reflecting the faint glow of the emerging light. You see your reflection there, not as a fragmented set of roles or wounds, but as a whole presence. Your past stands behind you like a line of gentle silhouettes. Your patterns stand beside you like old companions. Your shadow stands just behind your shoulder, no longer needing to hide. You feel no fear. You feel no resistance. Only a profound sense of recognition. This river shows you who you have always been beneath the layers of fear and desire. When you touch the surface, the water ripples. The reflection shifts into a series of images. You see the moments you abandoned yourself. You see the moments you gave too much. You see the moments you silenced your truth. But you also see the moments you were brave, the moments you chose honesty, the moments you stepped away from what no longer served your soul. The water holds all of it with equal tenderness. It does not judge. It does not divide. It simply reflects. In this reflection, you feel the deep compassion that your own heart has been waiting to give itself. A soft breeze passes through the trees. It carries the scent of dawn, a faint mixture of warmth and renewal. You close your eyes and breathe it in. The forest around you seems to respond, as if exhaling with you. This breath becomes a turning point. You realize that you are no longer trying to escape the patterns of your past. You are meeting them with presence. You are meeting them with clarity. You are meeting them with the kind of love that does not depend on another person's validation. And in this meeting, something inside you begins to dissolve. The heaviness that clung to your chest loosens. The tension in your thoughts softens. A gentle radiance spreads from within. This is the moment when the inner alchemy begins. You feel the fire of awareness and the coolness of acceptance blending within you. The shadow that once guided you from the dark now stands in the light, revealing its true purpose. It was never trying to break you. It was trying to show you the places where you were still bound. It was trying to open your heart to the truth of your own longing. It was trying to lead you into a deeper intimacy with yourself. And as this realization blooms, the forest seems to transform. What once felt like a maze now feels like a sanctuary. You feel the presence of your past relationships surrounding you like a circle of quiet witnesses. Not as ghosts, but as teachers. Their lessons no longer sting. Their memories no longer pull you backward. They become stepping stones leading you toward a more conscious way of loving. You understand now that true intimacy is not something you find in another person. It is something you awaken within yourself and then share. It is a mirror that reflects not your wounds, but your wholeness. And in this new understanding, the entire landscape of your inner world shifts from shadow to subtle radiance. You take another breath. The first brush of dawn light touches the trees. The sky opens slowly, like an eye waking from a long dream. The river glows with the pale colors of morning. You feel the boundaries between your past, your shadow, and your awakening self begin to dissolve. Everything you once feared becomes part of your strength. Everything you once hid becomes part of your clarity. Everything you once chased becomes part of your stillness. And in this stillness, a profound sense of alignment fills you, as if your soul has finally taken its rightful place in the center of your life. You stand at the edge of the water, watching the light spread gently across the horizon. The forest breathes with you. The river listens. Your shadow rests at peace. And as the sun rises, you feel the quiet truth that has been forming through every step of this journey. You were never lost. You were being led. You were never broken. You were being revealed. You were never chasing love. You were learning how to return to yourself. And from this returning, a new beginning unfolds within you. You step away from the river with a sense of inner calm that feels almost unfamiliar. It moves through you like a soft current, gentle yet steady, carrying the quiet understanding you gathered along this journey. The forest around you feels lighter now, as if the trees themselves were acknowledging your shift. The ground beneath your feet holds you with more certainty. The air rests softly against your skin. Nothing about the outer world has changed, yet everything inside you seems to breathe with new rhythm. You walk slowly, sensing the presence of your shadow beside you. It no longer hides in corners or pulls you through old patterns without your awareness. It walks with you openly, its presence no longer a weight, but a reminder. You understand now that it was never the enemy. It was the part of you that carried the emotions you were not ready to feel. It protected what you abandoned. It safeguarded your truth until you could hold it again. And now, As you move forward, the shadow becomes a companion rather than a guide. It no longer needs to choose for you. You can choose with it. There is a moment when you pause and look back over the paths you once walked unconsciously. You see the places where you chased love out of fear. You see the patterns that shaped your longing. You see the faces that stirred your old wounds. And instead of regret, you feel gratitude rising quietly within you. Each moment of confusion brought you closer to clarity. Each heartbreak opened a door. Each repetition carved a deeper understanding. These experiences were not detours. They were thresholds that led you here. The forest begins to thin as you continue walking. Light filters through the branches in soft beams, spreading warmth across your path. You feel this warmth settling inside your chest. It gathers like a slow flame, steady and comforting. It reminds you that the relationship you have been searching for has always been with the self you now begin to meet. The self who knows their worth. The self who listens with compassion. The self who no longer abandons their inner truth for the promise of belonging. This relationship becomes your anchor. You sense that the world outside this inner forest will still challenge you at times. You will still feel longing. You will still feel fear. You will still feel the pull of old patterns. But something fundamental has shifted. You will notice these moments differently. You will observe your reactions with more softness. You will hear the subtle signals of your shadow without mistaking them for commands. And as you move through new relationships, you will recognize the echoes more quickly, allowing you to respond with intention rather than instinct. The trees open fully now, revealing a quiet clearing touched by morning light. You step into it slowly, letting the warmth settle across your shoulders. The stillness here feels sacred. You sense that this is the place where your inner journey becomes your outer life. A place where you stand whole, aware, and gently aligned with the truth that has unfolded within you. You understand that loving others begins with the love you offer yourself. You understand that the shadow becomes light when met with presence. You understand that your relationships become clearer when your heart is no longer divided. You take one more breath, letting the air fill you with a sense of peaceful clarity. The forest behind you hums softly. The path ahead opens without urgency. You feel no rush to move, no pressure to decide, only the quiet companionship of your own soul resting fully in your awareness. The journey continues, not as a search, but as a gentle unfolding. And as you step forward, the world seems to whisper around you, a soft echo rising from the center of your being, carrying a truth that feels like a final exhale. You are here now, and you are home.